9 years after Mad Max Fury Road, it is time to return to the Wasteland for Furiosa. Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. George Miller returns to write and direct the movie. And the role of Furiosa, previously played by Charlize Theron, is now passed down to Anya Taylor-Joy, who is playing a younger version of a character because this is a prequel taking place before Mad Max Fury Road. Anya Taylor-Joy is one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood today and has really been impressing since The Witch from 2017. I pretty much loved everything that she's been in up to this point, and while I would have liked to see Charlize Theron come back to play the titular character once again, this being a prequel, it makes sense to cast somebody younger, and I really can't think of anyone better than Anya Taylor-Joy. Chris Hemsworth also gets to flex his villain muscles here as Dementus, a character that I was really looking forward to seeing what kind of atmosphere he would tap into, maybe a side that we had not previously seen from him before. And if you don't know me and my history with the franchise, I am notorious for being a Mad Max Fury Road hater. I saw it once in 2015 and I thought that it was very overhyped and I never understood the praise that it received. And for years, I stuck with that opinion until I rewatched it leading up to the release of Furiosa, and my mind completely flipped. I'm in the same boat as everybody else now. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it is really just the definitive action film of this generation. George Miller just taps into this space that I don't think any other filmmaker has the capacity of doing so. This is his brainchild. This is everything that he's created, and I think Fury Road is just the best display of those ideas that he's had for so many years. I don't know why I didn't love it for so long. Maybe I just hadn't expanded my palette yet, and I didn't know what my taste was when it came to the movies that I liked. But I'm happy to say that I'm finally on board the Fury Road train, and that being said, going into this movie, I was hoping that it would be on the same level as Fury Road, even though I knew it probably wouldn't match it. And overall, I had a very fun time with this movie. I think it definitely provides a lot of the same energy and a lot of the same filmmaking approach that makes this franchise so special, that makes George Miller so iconic. Grand set pieces, kinetic action, explosive, high-octane sequences that really never give you a chance to catch your breath, as well as a very frantic editing style that I think only works in the capacity of a Mad Max movie. This is something that it's known for, and it continues that trend with this movie. Anya Taylor-Joy playing a young Furiosa definitely embodies the essence of the character, and it's nice being able to see the way that her story started and how it led up to the point that we see her in Mad Max Fury Road. Well, to an extent. I'll get to that later. And in this movie, one thing I love is that they do expand on the lore a bit and give a little bit more characterization to these people. We feel for them more. We understand more of their driving motivations. It's much more narrative driven than previous installments in the franchise have been, and that's something I can definitely get behind as somebody who latches on to stories. We get the inciting incident that leads her on her revenge tale, and then everything after that is just an escalating spiral into seeking vengeance. The place that we see her in the trailers and at the end of the movie, and where she's at come Fury Road. This role is very physically demanding, and I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy really stepped up to the plate and fully committed here, made you really buy into her character and everything she had to achieve. It's also nice to see Chris Hemsworth go a bit crazy. Now, I won't say that this is so far out of the range of anything he's done before. I feel like he's definitely pulling from some of the same sensibilities that he brings to the Thor character and other roles he's taken on, except maybe a little more expanded, a little more elevated in the madness. His nose is working overtime, that's one thing I will say. I love the way that this film explores the geopolitical landscape, and it really expands on the lore in an interesting way, tells you how everything works, and gives you a little bit of background about how these humans now interact with their environment in the post-apocalyptic era. Power struggle, the scarcity of resources. This is all very interesting stuff that wasn't heavily explored in Mad Max Fury Road. It's something that was touched upon much more in the earlier installments, like the first Mad Max and Road Warrior, but was later kind of pushed to the side for the more high-octane thrill ride moments. Anytime a franchise later on in its run is still able to find new and interesting ways to expand the mythology, always interests me, and I really appreciate when they're able to do that well, which I think they do here. There's also plenty of callbacks and direct imagery that relates back to previous installments that I think any fan of the franchise will like, and when those moments came up on the screen, it was like a very big aha moment. But ultimately, it's just a fun time at the theater. If you're wanting to go see a movie that you can just turn your brain off and enjoy the exciting visuals being thrown at the screen, then this is the movie for you. There is plenty to latch onto. That being said, while I didn't expect this film to be on the same level as Mad Max Fury Road for a multitude of reasons, I still found myself being quite underwhelmed overall. Let's talk about the visuals, because that has definitely been something that has been heavily remarked on and been a big center point of discussion. I think for the most part, the visuals look good. They're exciting, they're vibrant, they're chaotic, they're for the most part everything that you would expect from this franchise. But something that I loved about Fury Road so much is how the lines were really blurred with what was practical and what was movie magic. There was heavy use of CGI in that movie, but it was very hard to tell when the CGI was overtaking the practical effects. It was able to be merged in a way that we had not previously seen before, and at a level that was so high that it just created such a unique, immersive experience that felt like it had never been done before and probably could never be replicated. And while this movie contains a lot of the same visual flair, there's an overwhelming use of CGI that's noticeable here. There isn't as much of that blurring of the lines between practicality and visual effects, because it's obvious that they weighed much heavier into visual effects this time around, which that's nothing new to come by. Many blockbusters these days rely almost entirely on visual effects to bring these exciting sequences to life, but I wouldn't say that they were executed the best. In fact, they were very messy and extremely noticeable, and at times it really just sort of took me out of the moment. There are obvious uses of green screen here, as well as moments to where the characters clearly do not blend in with their surroundings, and the entire movie has a very glossy look to it. And the color palette used here just makes it all feel very plastic, very artificial. There isn't as much realism, or at least a feeling of realism, that I would have expected, which I know that George Miller is very old at this point, so he's not going to be able to do as many things as he once could. And this is also a movie coming out post-pandemic time, so some things are just harder to achieve visually than before. And this was already a very grueling production with a process that left the entire crew and all of the actors wiped by the end of it. Just overall, in comparison to the previous movies in the franchise, this did feel like a step back in terms of visuals. I would also say that this movie falls into the ever-growing issue of blockbuster movies going on for way too long. I have no issue with the film having a long runtime, as long as the runtime is justified and serves and benefits the story in some way. The way that this film is set up, it's split into 5 chapters, and simply put, I believe that there are some chapters that really worked, were very exciting and engaging both visually and narratively speaking, and others that just sort of dragged the film down. There are clear moments throughout where I feel like they could have trimmed it back quite a bit, and this would have been a much tighter movie overall. And maybe I wouldn't have had as big of an issue with the film being as long as it was if it packed the same punch as the previous movies, if it had as much craftsmanship on the same level as Fury Road did. But I think something Fury Road proves is that you can accomplish a lot with a somewhat moderate runtime. It doesn't have to be 2.5 hours long to get your story across. It's all about pacing and editing and story structure, which, speaking of story structure, that is my biggest issue with the movie. In hindsight, Furiosa is simply a movie about the events that led up to her losing her arm. The rest of it, while it does give more insight into her character and where she came from and what led her to where she is later on in the franchise, at the same time, it doesn't really feel like we learn anything here that's directly related to where she is in Fury Road. The film focuses so much time on Dementus as the main antagonist, but Dementus is not the one that we knew about prior. He's not the one that they seem to put a major focus on in Fury Road. From what we knew previously, Immortan Joe was the one she had grievances with. Immortan Joe was the one she wanted to get revenge on. And while I'm not saying that the character of Dementus didn't do things that propelled her to go on this vengeance trail. It felt like we just spent so much time on his character and why she was going up against him that it totally abandoned the character that is focused on in the previous outing and what was more interesting overall. Immortan Joe is somebody who captured her for years, held her enslaved to become one of his wives. Why are we not getting more insight into his character and her growing hatred for him? Just narratively, it felt very off balance. There are also things when it comes to love interests that come into play, as well as just the sequence of events that occur. It felt very discombobulated and unfocused. And by the end, it just left me questioning what was the purpose of this whatsoever. It didn't expand on anything to the level that merited a 2.5-hour prequel film. And maybe that is just my personal grievances coming into play, and that's not how the majority of audiences are going to feel, because most people seem to be loving this movie and praising it for every story element, all of the visuals, everything about it. But I just didn't feel like it really developed into anything interesting. I also mentioned that Anya Taylor-Joy is good for what she is given. I said that because I don't feel like this story really serves her character very well. There's a large chunk of the movie where this version of her character is not even shown on screen, and then when she is, she spends a majority either in captivity or being passed around by different owners, and it seems like there was much more of an emphasis put on the villain. And I'm not saying she doesn't have plenty of moments to shine, because she does, but everything with her character either feels forced or rushed or unfocused, and by the end of it, it just felt like she was sort of given the short end of the stick. That being said, in terms of prequels, this is still probably one of the best prequels ever made. Not that there is many great ones to compare it to, but overall, I was just expecting a bit more from this movie, and I didn't feel like it delivered on the way I hoped it would. But with all that being said, I'm gonna have to give Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, a 6.5 out of 10. So guys, make sure to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this movie, and tell me, where would you rank it in the Mad Max franchise? Do you like this one better than Fury Road? Is it somewhere in the middle? Give me all of your thoughts and opinions down below. Also, if you would, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace out.